silhouette. It overviews the whole thing. In a moment, he'll start showing that demo being run. As far as I can tell, that demo is taking up like 70% of my memory when I try and run it, when I readjust things. So it just doesn't ever get around to showing itself. But it's funny because it was working this morning in the hotel room. And now this looks like it's stalled. Is it stalled? Oh no, he's just talking across the video here. So in a moment he's going to show the demonstration and he'll show the same thing. What we can get is that we get this sort of shared space out. And I'll be able to move around in that shared space. I just can't change the dimensionality of the shared space. So I think in this video he's talking about like the private and latent spaces and how they're all differently weighted, and there's these two views, but you have different sets of weights. The weights for Y, the weights for Z, and here is the result that they both share these first three dimensions, and then they have these other dimensions are all private. So these dimensions deal with the identity of the person, and the first three dimensions deal with the variation due to the movement of the light source. It's a shame we can't change that dimensionality, because you actually really see it. It's kind of hemispherical, that light source movement. So this is the data with these different, so this is how the data is presented to the model, right? So different people, but same light source variation. Yeah? So the shared stuff about these things is where the lighting's coming from. So first he's going to show moving around the identity latent space. This is what I was trying to show you, this cluster of three private latent spaces. Now unfortunately when he does the video it doesn't show it smoothly. It is smooth if you do it on screen. He's moving around, see, dimensions 5 and 14. So I was trying to demonstrate something like this, and as he moves the person changes identity. But notice as well, the identity is ghost. It's the same problem as the dog. That it doesn't understand the nearness. So this is ghosting around the identities. They sort of see the noses coming in. At some point there's two noses. If we wanted to get that smoothness, now look at this grid pattern. This grid pattern's really showing where the lighting rig was. There's several points on one position. And that's because they took these photos of someone mounting the lighting in the same position each time. And the models picked that out. It's not forced to do that, but it does that. So that's quite a nice, and we were very excited by the results of this. Let me just try moving around the lighting position. So I'll skip that, that's the hierarchical GP-LVM video. And tidy up that one. This is just going through the series of video demos again to get to the right demo. Let's get rid of that one, and then hopefully we will at least be able to move hopefully around the lighting space and see how the lighting varies. So this is the non-working demo if I change the dimensionality. So those are those scales, and look here, you see? So these are the shared dimensions, 1 and 2. I daren't touch, I daren't change the dimensions because it will go crazy on the memory as it tries to recreate the plot. No idea why that is. In that direction there is sort of more of a black-white. Why are the 3? Well, it really does look like when you view the 3 dimensions that it's doing this hemisphere of lighting. One of those dimensions, so 2 of them are associated with the direction of the light, and the other one's associated with intensity. So you end up, if you move in the dimension into areas where there was no light, you can make the face super bright. So it works out 3 dimensions, 1 with intensity and 2 with position. And notice they're really non-linear. Okay, so I want to run, while we've got this up, naught means skip this part. We're going to skip that part, and we're going to see if we can just do the final demonstration, which is, I haven't introduced yet, but since I'm having problems with MATLAB, if it will run, I'd like to run it now. Otherwise, I'll just go back to the slides and try and describe what you'd see in that demo. But I think it's the nicest demo, so it's worth giving it a little bit of patience. It's not MATLAB that's slowing things up at the moment. Yeah. Something's gone wrong. Come on. Okay, with luck, come on. No, I don't want to skip that part. Okay. This is the crowning glory demonstration, because I'll try and explain what's going on here. This is a deep GP-LVM. So I haven't explained the model because I want to stick in the MATLAB while MATLAB appears to be working. And it's a model of digits, the digits 0, 1, and 6. We've got 5 layers. I'd actually draw them the other way up, but Andreas has done them this way. And it's selected the dimensionality at each layer. It's also selected the number of layers. It's chosen a 5-layer model. Like, it doesn't want a 6-layer model, and it does better with a 5-layer model than the 4-layer model on the lower bound on the marginal likelihood. What the idea with these deep models is the low levels, and we're sampling from 2 dimensions of a low level, dimensions 2 and 4, should be dealing with small feature changes in the digits. So we've set this one up to demonstrate that these 2 dimensions handle a miss. You know, see that O there? That's a small feature change. Actually, it moves a little bit towards a 6. So, you know, just little distortions, the O opening at the top. So this is sampling from this level here. The idea with these deep level models, and this one is trained in our variational way, is that as you go up the hierarchy, they should start doing more and more abstract things. So with luck, he says after the last demo didn't work, we've now moved up to layer 2. Oh, and I've lost my mouse. Now it's a weird thing that you have to just change the window to get the pixels, right? Now at this level, we're seeing a more global feature. So we see a larger distortion. We've chosen to distort the 6 here. We could choose to distort something else. We're only looking at 2 dimensions of a level which has 12 dimensions switched on. That first level has 15 dimensions switched on. And if I do it once more, we'll come to the top level. So this is the level 5. We've skipped 2 levels, and we're now at level 5. Let me get the window on screen. It's weird this. You have to just, this is some MATLAB thing. You have to change the window size or else you get a very... Now look at that. Ooh. Okay, I get to move between all the digits, but in some really sort of structured way, yeah? It knows about the structure of the digits. It's a very sensible, smooth transition. You don't really see anything that looks non-digit-like, regardless of where I am. And this is working with these abstract ideas at the top, switching on less abstract ideas, more and more detailed ideas as you go down. And that's what the deep learning people say that they can do. And this is it going with Gaussian processes. But this is going with only 300 data points. So you need these deep 5-layer models for even very small data sets. And these models are really, really powerful. Now it'll take me a while to get the slides back up. Let me just close that. Beep, beep. Oh, I could try moving in one of the other dimensions as well, see if it does anything interesting. No. Or do I have to do an update? Don't press the update button. So let's try. So we're in 5 and 6. We're in these 2. These ones are sort of switched off a little bit, but they probably do something. 3 and 4. Don't press the update button. Yeah, they're kind of switched off, right? So 5 and 6 are on, but 3 and 4 seem to be off. So it's really mapped it down to 2 dimensions, this plot, at the end. Okay, let's kill that and try and get back to the talk. In the old days, you used to be able to view these things full screen, and it was in a really nice place. No, see, there it is. There we go. Right. Oh, that's not even present. Oh, damn it. Yeah. Is it F5? Is that it? Yeah. I wish they wouldn't move the menus around all the time. It confuses old people. There we go. So that's the Yale Faces example. And then this is the idea with that deep learning example. So we've got Gaussian processes on top of Gaussian processes on top of Gaussian processes. And we can also learn the structure of these layers if we like. We don't in that example there. We could choose to have different ARD parameters for each thing. And this is, so actually the model I've just been showing you was a 5-layer model, so it was 1 layer deeper than what I'm showing you here. So we might prefer to view them like that, and the idea is you've got abstract features like which digit, and as you drop down, you get sort of more and more detailed features until you get to data space. So you can do this linearly, right? But it doesn't really make much sense to do this linearly, because if you keep on applying linear transformations on top of each other, so this, remember, this is what's going on here. Another way of viewing it is functional composition. So you've got F1 of F2 of F3 of F4 of X or whatever. Like that. Now if the f of x's are linear, this is just W1 times W2 times W3 times W4 of x. Yeah? So it's just a linear thing again, because all those w's merge together to get a new matrix. So the linear stuff isn't very interesting. So these are samples from deep linear GPs, but these are samples from deep GPs. So the idea is that you start with this two-dimensional object, you push it through a GP, it distorts it. Once that distortion is done, it cannot be undone. Because now these 2 points, this cross, for example, is crossed forever. So when you move to the next level, it's still crossed. So any feature that appears at this level must appear all the way down. It can be further distorted. And okay, these things start to disappear into that plane, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of idea about where that is. So here's another one here. Look, once it's twisted like that, that twist there is that twist there. It cannot be removed. It's somewhere embedded in there after that. And this feature here, look, is still there. So the high-level thing, those features always appear, and then the low-level things, they can be distorted. There's another sample. So this little twick in here is that twick in there, and it looks like it's there, I think. It's harder to see. This twist here is the twist there, is the twist there. It's probably the twist there, actually. Yeah, so those are sort of samples from this model. Now, the stacked GPs video I've already shown you, but I'll show it again, because I quite like it. So David Duverneau is a student at Cambridge, and I've just misspelt his name. That's him. Oh, where's this stacked GPs? There it is. So what he's doing is showing that same visualization in a different way with some funky animations. And because he saw me do this talk at Cambridge, and he was like curious about the, I think this is how he was inspired to do this. So he showed that little thing I showed, and he said, oh, let me do that in some funky way. Now what happens as you go deeper and deeper and deeper is you get these twists, and everything starts collapsing together. And he was intrigued by that. I was like, David, that's just because we're doing it in 2 dimensions. We never do it in 2 dimensions. The reason this happens intuitively, this is why you should never listen to professors. Intuitively, it was obvious to me why this was going to happen, right? Because once those things are mapped to a 2D space close together, it's always a smooth mapping. They can never be pulled apart again. So on average, every mapping, if you keep low dimension, will pull things closer together and keep moving data on top of itself, giving this clumpy effect that he was visualizing there. Does that make sense? It's a very non-Gaussian effect. It's totally non-Gaussian. I mean, as we go down, we're seeing a 2D space with strings of data across it. But he's like, oh, that's a pathology. You don't want that type of behavior. And I'm like, of course you don't want that, David. But you never do this. You would never do a 2-dimensional thing like this. You actually start low and you build up higher, as I've shown. You know, so I'm not worried about this at all. But David actually sat down and analysed this stuff and came up with a really nice theoretical paper which gives a lot of insight into these deep GPs. So let's see if I now press F5 rather than faffing around. This is the paper. It's just been published. It's with himself, Ryan Adams on Ripple, and Zubin Garamani. And it looks But here's the model. It looks at deep GPs. It talks about their relations to deep neural networks, which is kind of quite well known, but it's nice that they put this in, because we hadn't really spent much time making this clear. And what he shows is, okay, this is a one-dimensional deep GP, a 1D GP into a 1D GP into a 1D GP. And he studies this, and he actually specifically, or they as a group study this for the derivative distribution. So they're interested in what you can say about the distribution of derivatives of the new process you get. And they show that that distribution becomes heavier and heavier tailed as you go through the stacking. So someone asked earlier, well, how would I deal with, like, you know, random zigzags coming through? The heavy-tailed nature of that distribution means over the one-layer GP, you see this smooth Gaussian process, but as you go to 2 layers, you start seeing this flattening. And then as you go to 5 layers, you start seeing jagged jumps, right? This is now more like a jump process. It's sort of going along at the same position, and then it jumps down and stays down, and then it pops back up again. And you can theoretically show that this will happen if you start stacking low-dimensional GPs. If you keep the dimensions high, you actually get smooth things coming out still. But if you keep them low, you can get this type of effect, and they can show what the Jacobian of that is. It's a product of independent normal matrices, and that leads to particular effects. So then they study what this means in slightly higher dimensions, and they make suggestions to how, if you don't want this effect, that you should mix. So what they suggest is, at each layer, instead of just going through things like this, you should mix in some of the inputs. And I have an alternative reason for why you should do this. I think this is quite a good idea, actually. But I have an alternative motivation for it that I'd like to get written up and published if I ever have time. But this is a really nice paper. So this is just out, and it's in AI Stats this year, which is all about, it shows us that it talks about deep networks in general, but GPs are just a deep network that are easy to analyze. Other people are working like ourselves, are working on scaling these models up in terms of data, being able to, at the moment we can only do 1,000 data points or something, but we should, again, Yarin Gal, who's in Zubin's group, and someone else whose name slips my mind, I'm afraid, are looking at parallelization of these models, and we're looking at stochastic gradient descent in these models as well. So there's a bunch of interesting work going on in this area, which I'm very excited about. Then this is just the thing I've shown you that says, you know, the question here is, are these deep hierarchies, which have all these parameters, justified for small data sets? So I'd forgotten this data set size. This is only 150 digits. And the model, we get a lower bound on the marginal likelihood, and that lower bound tells us, yes, 5 layers, please. Any model less than 5 layers is worse. Okay, so what can we do that Google can't? That's my sort of, Google's resources give them access to volumes of data, and you sometimes wonder, well, can we do anything with the data we have? What data can we access? So what can universities do? And I think that this is where we've been going. This is the big picture for the group, is that what we'd like to do is use these models to pull together multiple views of patients in medical situations and try and make predictions about their health. So I call this idea deep health. And this is pulling together everything you've kind of learned so far. First of all, it's a deep structure. Why is it a deep structure? Because we think certain things you measure about patients are more abstract than others. So, for example, a doctor has an image of someone's disease state in their head, which is some sort of abstraction of everything they've heard about the patient. And he makes a guess about how long they'll survive. Previous patients have died very quickly. So survival analysis is something that occurs, I would claim, at a very abstract level. Gene expression may also directly relate to that abstract level, or it may relate to these lower levels here. Who knows? We can learn that. We can learn the structure with deep GPs. What about the patient's social network status? What about the patient, what they're listening to in terms of music? Can we use that to help inform something about their state of health? Quite possibly, with mental illnesses, you're going to see changes in behavior that you can pick up on social networks or through changes in what music they're listening to, which are indirectly related to their health state, perhaps. We get clinical measurements, biopsies, x-rays, clinical notes. All those things are telling us something about the patient's state. We'd like to combine that with knowing about the patient's genotype. So what's their genetic background? What diseases are they predisposed to? Their epigenotype. So their epigenotype is some sort of environmentally affected genetic background. It's a combination of environment and genome. And the environment, what they've been exposed to. Are they smokers? Do they exercise? All this to build a picture of the patient's health. Now, you look at that and you think, well, that's ridiculous. You're not going to be able to do all that. And we're not trying to do all that in one go. But almost every project in the group is taking a part of this model. So Niccolò Fusi looked at genotype, environment, and gene expression and built a model of these that was based on Gaussian processes and tried to interrelate them. We'd also like to do that with epigenotype as well and add that in. Alan Saul is doing survival analysis, and we'd like to try and combine that with genotype. So you take these two parts of the model. I'd like Max to try and start looking at clinical measurements and perhaps combine that with genotype if we get time. We're certainly building the type of models that will allow us to do that. Sorry, not genotype, gene expression, I should say. Gene expression we have as an output here. You know, we're looking a little bit at images, although we're not getting anything too much out of those yet. I think that's quite hard. And I'd love to do language modeling of clinical notes or social network updates and try and map that to something about someone's status. So that's the picture. So sometimes I kept calling this a Power Ranger model of research. So this is the research group, and they're all dressed up as Power Rangers here. And the reason it's a Power Ranger model of research, if you ever watch the Power Rangers, what happens is in the beginning of the show, they all individually try and fight the bad guys, right? And then at some point, so they're all active individually and they have some sort of power. I don't know. I haven't watched it, really. I mean, my son watched it, but I didn't pay that much attention. But at the end of the show, like, it always ends up that they have to combine into this sort of large robot-type figure where they all seem to sit in the head. I don't know, are they sitting in the head or the body? And they control it against the bad guy. So that's the model of research. At the moment, everyone's doing some subset of the big monster. But they're doing it in the framework of Gaussian processes. They're working on non-Gaussian likelihoods. They're working on these structural learning algorithms. They're working on deep Gaussian processes. They're working on algorithms for sticking everything together. And the idea is, once we've got all those parts sorted, we can try and pull it together and do something a little bit pie in the sky. I mean, a little bit ambitious for anything but the near term. So that's sort of where we're going with that. And then there's references there, and I'm afraid I overran the entire workshop by 10 minutes. So questions? I don't really dress the students up like that. And that image is courtesy Alan Saul did that. Because I kept mentioning the Power Ranger model of research, but I didn't have a diagram to illustrate it. So he gave me a diagram to illustrate the Power Ranger model of research. Okay? So, no questions? You had a question. You're about to ask one.
He was looking at the picture.
Which one, sorry?
Picture. Are you certain?
I'm in the picture, yeah. This is me at the top. Yeah. I don't know, there's apparently a boss of the Power Rangers, but I've never seen him. But anyway. Certain. Oh, that's Certain. Oh, okay, you see no more about it than I do. That was me on my way to Los Angeles. You see, when I went to Los Angeles, I had those Ray-Bans. When I'm in Colombia, I have my Panama hat. So, you know, you always have to have something to wear. So now we need a picture of me with a Panama hat doing the... well, yeah, although the story of this is it's a Panama hat, but it's made in Ecuador, and therefore, on average, it's from Colombia. Okay. Right, so questions, any other questions about the Power Rangers? I don't know much about them, or the overall image. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I mean, we'll probably be hanging around for a bit, so you can ask things if you want. We can sort of end the summer school there, or the equatorial school, I suppose it should be.